Hello there, and welcome to another edition of Are You For Real? Hosted by me, Draxtor Dupre, an artificial intelligence with a Pac-Man shirt, with an animated Pac-Man shirt. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Um, this is only happening in my mind and possibly in a online game called Neurocracy 2049. I'm actually just Draxter Dupre, a real human being coming from public access to Second Life, and I'm a real human being behind a very handsome avatar. Today on the show, Joannes Truyens, I hope I do pronounce his name correctly, the mastermind behind an online text-based um, murder mystery game, in a piece of interactive fiction. I hope we will learn how to define that term. And you play by going down a wiki rabbit hole on a website uh, called omnipedia.app. As a matter of fact, let me just walk up here. We have, if you want to do this later, don't do this now because the show is about to start. But we have these old ancient computer terminals ready for you, and they have omnipedia.app on there, so you can actually play that game, get sucked into Omnipedia, and so maybe solve that murder mystery, that assassination, um, or maybe not. I have no idea what the goal of this game is, but we will find out. Now, Johannes, hello, how are you? Welcome to the Second Life Book Club.
Oh, thank you. I'm very good. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm just still marveling at how amazing this venue look. It is so incredibly welcoming. So I can't thank you enough for that, and for the lovely introduction.
Yeah, let's have the camera pan around maybe a little bit. And Johannes, it's interesting because this is a good um sort of sci-fi cyberpunk interior, but you feel it matches the vibe of your game, right?
Definitely, definitely. And one part in particular, one of the articles on Omnipedia is about an AI-hosted reality show. And the set for that show resembles this venue quite a bit, to the point that I thought it was, specifically based on it.
That is amazing, and that's the Are You For Real show, which is hosted
Yes,
by an AI. And if the camera pans around you, there's a bunch of screenshots from Omnipedia, from your game, Neurocracy. Well, the game is called Neurocracy 2049, but the website is omnipedia.app. And
mm,
there are illustrations, and I want to dive in today about text, but it's mainly text-based or article-based and character-based. So the movie is although there are these characters and these illustrations, the movie is happening in your head, which is amazing. I mean, this is an amazing genre of games. I'm myself, as people know, am not a gamer, so I'm always fascinated by people who work in this genre, who express themselves in that genre. And yeah, so now well, first of all, let me actually ask you, why should you be on a book show when you are a game designer? What's going on, you? How did you trick yourself into this book program?
how did you trick me into coming on this book club? Of course.
Hey, passing the blame. Yeah, but
But
no, I mean, what is the connection here between what you do, and I think on your website you call yourself a narrative designer. What is that, and what are the relations to um more linear storytelling, I guess?
Oh, well, when I am asked the question whether Neurocracy is a book or a game, I always answer with, yes, it is, because it does sort of occupy the fuzzy space between the two. And part of that is because Neurocracy took many shapes before I turned it into what it is today. And it was going to be a game at first, then it was going to be a novel. And only when I got to the core premise of using Wikipedia as the delivery medium for this story did everything sort of come together. And now I like to say that it might not be a novel, but it is novel.
It really is. And I'm going to ask you, maybe I should ask you this now because, well, first of all, give us a little synopsis of what's going on, because I think then my question about um, what is the danger of blurring the lines between between fiction and reality, especially on Wikipedia or on a Wikipedia style format. What's the premise? What's happening in this story when you go in on Omnipedia? What is going on there, story wise?
So Neurocracy, the elevator pitch is that you get to explore the Wikipedia of the year 2049. So it's a near future world that you get to explore by reading these different articles on Omnipedia. And in doing so, in reading these articles, you get to sort of piece together what has happened and what is happening in the year 2049. And basically everything that Neurocracy is comes from that premise, using Wikipedia as a format, as a fictional format. So it's is it epistolary novel? Is it an alternate reality game? Is it hypertext fiction? Is it a detective thriller? It is all of those things, but I never set out specifically to create any one of those. The idea of using Wikipedia to tell a story, that's where it all started, and everything else just sort of came after, if that makes sense.
Hmm. But there are certain elements of that we're familiar with from sci-fi or cyberpunk here. I put an illustration up here. This is which one is this? Spencer Hagen and Zhu Xiao Wang. They're demonstrating something here in this image. I don't know if you see
Hmm.
the image, but what are
Yes,
they?
I do.
What are these guys making here? So I mean, these are, I don't want to call them tropes necessarily, but these are familiar elements that can be enticing to some, and some may say, well, I've seen that before in a million sci-fi stories. But tell us a little bit some plot points here with these guys.
Oh yeah, so these two characters, Spencer Hagen and Shu Xiaoyang, are basically two main characters of Neurocracy, and you basically get to know them through their Omnipedia articles. And it is near future science fiction, speculative science fiction. It's basically the kind of science fiction that I go for. Another name for it is hard science fiction, but basically with
Hmm.
a respect for the, accurate science. And that's always the kind of science fiction I like to read. And this Neurocracy is the first time that I get to actually make it.
And as you're
And
saying this, I'm putting up a slide here with Cariapa-Murin disease. So it's talking about hard sci-fi. I mean, there's enormous detail about this particular disease here, which reminds us of a pandemic that we're still in, for
Mhm.
example. And you go into enormous detail, or the articles do, about this disease and all the other aspects. And then there's tons of hyperlinks where you can go even deeper. And anyways, uh, go on.
Yeah, so basically that's my writing style tends to be pretty encyclopedic, and I love to indulge that kind of world building detail. If in a movie there's a quick shot of like a newspaper article or like a screen in the background, I will pause and read it. And the more effort that people put into those, even though I might be one of the few people that actually pause to take a look at it, that always shows me that okay, so there was some actual thought put into the world building. So I basically wanted to write something that is just those elements, those world building elements. And the Wikipedia format, it basically
Ah.
enabled me to do that. It's like I don't really trust in my capacity for writing engaging prose or characters, but I am good at world building and encyclopedic writing. So basically, Neurocracy allows me to do that, and then let you do the rest.
So you're not the guy kind of guy, because I'm currently completely obsessed with a German sci-fi series, Perry Roden. We got the writers on next week actually, and
Ooh.
there is a lot of, people like different things. I mean, the hard sci-fi folks, they demand 50 pages of a fictitious engine being described in detail and how it relates to space or whatever the other plot point is. And I can appreciate that, but I'm it's not my top thing that I desire from speculative fiction. I, on the other hand, can read 200 pages of sort of the philosophical musings about the nature of life or whatever. And this is interesting that for you as a hard sci-fi fan, this is a dream come true. The Wikipedia, it seems to be the perfect destination because you can go forever.
Yeah, yeah. In a lot of ways, neurocracy and using the Wikipedia format is just exactly both what I wanted to do and what I felt capable of doing. Like when the idea came to me to use Wikipedia as the format, everything else just sort of fell into place, and I realized I had found a way to tell this story uh, well, confidently in a way, because before it was going to be a novel, and before that it was going to be a modification for Half-Life 2, which is another video game. Those never materialized, although they were instrumental in bringing me to, the Wikipedia format that I'm using now.
Here's another illustration. The illustrations are really cool. This one here is the farming process for Lascar tuna has been implicated in this disease that is playing a role in the story. There are drones. This is an illustration of one of the drones and one of the big mega corporations, which is of course a very important element of any good cyberpunk or speculative fiction of that sort. This is the Supao headquarters. Just generally, I ask this quite often. Are you uh, concerned or does it hinder your creative process? The voice in your head that says, well, everything has been done before in speculative fiction, everything is a cliche or a trope, or are you like, whatever? I can still express myself. I have my own style that I overlay over those possibly uh, ubiquitous dramatic elements.
I think in a way it's both because, if you look hard enough, most ideas have been done. It's like it's not the idea, it's the execution. And I was
Hmm.
confident that building a world and telling a story through a fictional Wikipedia, that idea was, novel enough that it might attract a crowd. And I did look up similar projects to see if it had been done before, and there are a couple. I think the closest one I found was this sort of fictional encyclopedia of an alien world that was released in the
Oh.
80s, and I think it's called the Codex Seraphicanus. I'm probably getting that wrong,
Hmm.
but so that was the delivery method for the story, the Wikipedia, that felt like a novel idea. And then even the world itself, the world of 2049, it uses elements that I hadn't seen represented in fiction a lot. For example, one of those, the disease that you just mentioned, Cariabamirran disease. I have an unhealthy fascination with like fictional depictions of diseases and pandemics. The 2013 movie Contagion, which became,
Hmm.
popular again a couple of years ago, no idea why, was a huge inspiration. So the fact that I got to write a fictional disease and pandemic for myself, well, I'm basically just indulging what I wanted to do. And I also want to
Right.
stress that I wrote all that before COVID-19 came knocking, which, kind of unfortunately gave the story of neurocracy an edge.
This is
Um,
this is a quote that our researchers Shyla and Monkey I think found either in the Verge article or the Guardian, where you say even when an actual real life pandemic dropped and
yeah,
started preempting some of neurocracy's world building, the Wikipedia format has enabled us to quickly adapt and incorporate the lessons from this first modern day pandemic into our fictional one. So you're saying that you started this concept and then the pandemic hit and then you made a choice to incorporate it because I imagine for every creative person, a writer of film or books or whatever it is, it's a huge decision to incorporate that into a piece of fiction that they're working on or something in the future or just completely ignore it, right? I mean, there you have to make that decision because the
yeah,
world. is completely changed.
Yeah, like I think I figured out or decided for myself pretty fast that I was not going to ignore COVID-19. I didn't want to create like a parallel reality where it never happened. Also, the Wikipedia format enabled me to incorporate it as, a few references from a couple of random pages, but on a broader scale, the way that we had written this pandemic touched on a lot of ways that COVID-19 sort of affected society.
Mhm.
The Karapamiran disease pandemic of the fictional pandemic of the world of neurocracy actually set a lot of things in motion that COVID-19 that actually made happen, especially where it concerns sort of the overlap between pandemic measures and increased surveillance. Like that was sort of the crux
Mhm.
of the world of neurocracy, where fictional pandemic leads to increased surveillance measures. And yeah, we've been seeing that a lot with happening with COVID-19, where these temporary biosecurity measures then become permanent fixtures of the surveillance state. So that was always the intent, the premise of neurocracy's world, and the fact that it then started happening earlier was, something that was then unfortunately very easy to incorporate.
Mm. Shaila is asking here, this is interesting. What caused you to choose the locations China, the China, and then there's a Russian businessman. I don't know if Shaila intends to, or is this about the trope and the cliche? Because China is often, and especially now, seen, and especially by the U.S. as the new big threat, and then you also have a Russian businessman in there.
Hmm.
Is do you feel that that could be seen as, oh, Johannes, they're just playing around with these cliches all the time?
Well, again, these elements were very much present before they all started happening in real life. I think we have a reference to um, a conflict between Russia and Ukraine that happens, I think, around 2032 in the world of neurocracy, but then it started happening pretty much the same way in real life. Um,
I don't mean
so,
so much the current events now with the war in Ukraine, but I meant China as the big
oh
baddie,
yeah.
as the big sort of, for arguably, I would say, a couple of decades, even as the big sort of, in this sort of binary worldview of, the kind of binary, Cold War paradigm that some elements in the foreign policy circles in the US want to kind of recreate. I mean, you're not the only one doing it. I'm not accusing you of, like, oh my God, this is the lowest hanging fruit to use China here. By the way, I don't even know if these guys are the bad guys. We don't want to spoil anything. There's just a mega corporation, and they're just doing stuff, and one of the guys is Chinese. So,
Yeah, in
right?
this case, it is a Chinese mega corporation. Like, it wasn't my intent to really like exploit those tropes. I think it just occurred naturally from the research that I did into the world building pillars. Like, the world of neurocracy basically is about a pandemic. It's about brain implants, and it's about like the intersection of neuroscience and AI. And with all of those topics, China sort of keep coming to the forefront as where
Right.
the
I
cut
mean, this
where
is
the
where
cut
it's happening. Yeah.
yeah, where the cutting edge of that research is taking place. And
Yep.
then when I extrapolated that 30 years into the future, I also found that basically by 2049, that's the first centenary of the People's Republic of China from 1949. And when I found that year, I decided to make that the year that neurocracy takes place. Also because most near future science fiction that I've consumed in my youth was set in the 2050s. So I think choosing 2049, like just shy of the 2050s, was my response to that as well. So that's another reason why I decided to set that part in China.
That is a very, very good point. I mean, it makes sense to go with those topics to the nation state that is at the forefront of developing and disseminating these things. I threw up another slide here for folks to see. This is a screenshot of Omnipedia, the assassination of Zhu Xiaowang and Yuri Golitsyn.
Mhm.
So both the Chinese and the Russian guy get assassinated here. And you can see from the formatting here, you see on top where it says, as it's familiar to us from Wikipedia, this article documents a current event. Information may change rapidly as the event progresses, and initial news reports may be unreliable. So this is super fascinating. And on the side, we don't see it on the slide, is the revision history. I mean, this
Mhm.
is enormously complex. Talk a little bit about the player can then go into the revision history and then see what.
Then you can basically see the edits that have been made since the previous day, because Neurocracy is an episodic game. It takes place across 10 in-universe days, and with each article, you can check the revision history for edits that have been made. And this approach came organically from adopting Wikipedia as the medium for the story. Initially, the plan was to just write the articles after the facts, like with everything already having happened. And then the issue there was, well, what if players stumble upon the article with the answer right away? They can just click random article and, you know, get lucky. So
Mm,
then when because another thing is that we basically restricted ourselves to using for Omnipedia only the tools and systems that Wikipedia has. Like we couldn't add
mhm.
anything that Wikipedia does not have, because also because there's like an immediate literacy there. Everybody knows how to use Wikipedia, so that avoids the need for a tutorial in the sense that when you dive into Omnipedia, you immediately know
Right.
where to find everything. So that revision history came from adapting the revision histories of Wikipedia. And once we implemented that, we had found sort of a cool organic way to gate specific information. Like episode 1 has, I think, 9 articles, whereas episode 10 has around 35 or 40. So they're gradually added across the episodes, which allowed us to keep certain information back, or illustrate across these article edits and revision histories how these information is being edited and changed by whom and what it
By whom?
means. Like, yeah,
Right.
exactly. So that's also very much something that this medium afforded us.
This is amazing. And the slide that is up now is a screenshot of one of the from the revision history. And here you can see highlighted here, the pop-up is People's Liberation Army. Um, this is the investigation into this assassination, and you can see up here is added, deleted, and changed. It's green,
Mhm.
yellow, and red. And then, of course, by I guess finding out who did what revisions, you could then go down an even deeper rabbit hole into the reliability of certain people, and that may lead you um, to solving the puzzle. But is there actually a puzzle to solve? Is there an ending? Because here's a wait. Here I have a quote. For everything, I have a quote, Johannes, because you said that that you know the ending. It's just a matter of what we will and won't communicate about it. I guess the big philosophical question is: do we need an ending with this kind of wonderful, engaging, immersive gameplay?
Well, the thing is, with Neurocracy, I was sort of trying to find the middle between sort of a scripted story and a possibility space where the players could contribute to the story themselves. I saw a question just there about whether players can add or edit articles to Omnipedia. In the current version, they cannot, because with a small
Mm,
team, that's something that we really didn't see ourselves able to moderate. If anybody could just add or edit articles the way they can on Wikipedia, so it is still a curated experience. Um, as with regards to the ending, the idea there was that there is a murder mystery at the heart of Omnipedia, which we used as a hook, sort of to reel players in from the first episode.
Because this is what
Because
Paradise is asking. Other than reading a variety of articles about the world you envision, what is the gameplay aspect is Paradise? But you're about to, I think you're get going into that right now.
yeah, the gameplay is basically the wiki rabbit hole, a Wikipedia dive where you go from article to article. The murder mystery sort of is there to make every piece of information into a possible clue. Um,
Mhm.
I kind of like to think of it as I can't remember where I picked up the term, but it's kind of like a story lemon, where it has a very singular beginning point and a singular ending point, but the middle part sort of expands and
Mhm.
allows for so many more interpretations and story directions. Some of the articles really don't have much to do with the central storyline, but they still fit into the themes and topics of the world. So that sort of to wrong foot players or act as red herrings, with the result that
Mhm.
before the last episode landed and gave away the ending, there were so many different possibilities and guesses, which is something that I had hoped would happen, but I didn't know that it would be successful until until it was there.
And it's also a kind of a multiplayer aspect. I mean, talk a little
Mhm.
bit about the multiplayer aspect. I find that also fascinating. I mean, you're sitting there, but you have a Discord channel where people can talk about stuff. So this is what would be the multiplayer aspect of this?
That's also something that came up uh, naturally as after choosing Wikipedia as the format for this story. As I mentioned initially, it was going to be like an aftermath story where all the articles were immediately available, and you could just um, you know jump from article to article and piece together the story that way. But as soon as we implemented the revision history, which allowed for an episodic delivery, uh, we decided, well, wouldn't it be interesting if after the release of every episode, we just look at what players are discussing amongst themselves, which theories are coming up, then adapt future episodes to either push players in a different direction or incorporate their ideas, and that then became the multiplayer aspect, sort of like kind of like a book club. And again, I didn't really know what that would look like until it was there. I kind of underestimated the extent to which the community of players dove into neurocracy and
Yeah.
found little details in each article where even after the first episode was released, I already had so much to work with for the episodes that followed. So
But they're all up now, right? I mean, now we're at a stage where when we talk about episodes, they're all you can binge now, basically.
yes, so all episodes are now freely available on Wikipedia. You can jump to episode 10 and see what the ending is right now if you want.
Okay. Now, of course, I have to play devil's advocate because I find it worrisome, and it should worry everyone that the proliferation of conspiracy theories around the world are such that they are not a fringe phenomenon. And while I love, as a big reader and connoisseur of speculative fiction and paranoia-inducing narratives like, let's say, the Three Body Problem or even the Illuminati trilogy from the 70s, while I was preparing for the show, I was like, okay, we have people going into rabbit holes of all sorts of things, and now you're creating a fictional um, Wikipedia. And again, this is a devil's advocate thing, Johannes, because I know if I would be confronted with this question, I would say, well, uh, I'm an artist and I express myself a certain way. I am not responsible for the media literacy of the entire world's population or the lack thereof. But is there any type of, or do you think about this? Like, is there a concern that you're sucking people into something where the layer of discerning what real is and what is not, with a format that looks like the real thing, um
Yes, that that
Are
was,
you
yeah, you're right.
responsible for people going crazy, Johannes? Are you the new Q? Did you
The
start the QAnon?
it's
Come on,
it's
come out on this
interesting.
show.
Neurocracy does play on a lot of angles of alternate reality games, and I think there's a really interesting article from Adrian Hahn about ARG, alternate reality games, and how the sort of methods of misinformation are similar to how QAnon, processes and warps information. But
Right.
we always resisted like any marketing angle that would sell Neurocracy or its world as anything other than fictional, which is why the date 2049 is like visible in bold everywhere. Um, like Neurocracy went through a lot of different shapes and sizes before it ended up where it is today. And while it definitely can be defined as an alternate reality game and uses elements of that, it feels more like it organically started including those elements along its path. And like the fiction of Neurocracy is built on top of our present reality, so it does include
Right.
those references, COVID-19 uh, included.
Oh,
But
actually,
these,
somebody did ask earlier. Do you is there somewhere in there an article about COVID-19
oh
in
yeah,
on
I,
it?
I I saw that
Mhm.
question pass by, and there's not an article about it because one of the rules is that we could not replicate any article that already exists on Wikipedia. So I think if you go to Omnipedia, you'll find that most links just bring up a little preview, like a little tooltip, rather than going to a whole new article. And those actually solved a lot of gameplay problems for us. So if you browse Omnipedia, you will find a little tooltip that references COVID, but it's like 2 or 3 lines at most. Um,
Fantastic. And actually, you know what that you mentioned, because it's Neurocracy 2049. I mean, this should be your disclaimer. This is like the disclaimer on a pack of cigarettes where it says could cause lung cancer. It's like 2040. Wait, you didn't see that it was 2049? Well, it's your own fault that you're going out
well, I am very
that you're going out with a
happy.
machine gun into a pizza place. Anyways, don't go
Yeah, like I
into a
am very happy that
pizza
most
place.
people have picked up on, like, it's actually been mentioned that Neurocracy, and I'm quoting a review here, is a lesson in media literacy you didn't know you needed, precisely because the information on Omnipedia is so fluid, and you have to
Yeah.
figure out whether it's trustworthy or not and where it's coming from. And from the discussions in the Discord across those 10 weeks that we released the episodes, I did find that, people were very critical of this information and not just accepting everything at face value.
Precisely. This is kind of, I think, what Shiloh says here in the chat. You think the game helps people consider sources and accuracy of what they're reading, because with Wikipedia, frankly, I mean, still one of my favorite websites. We know little. I mean, we know kind of in broad strokes the who edits and what their qualifications are, but it's certainly not the Encyclopedia Britannica or other. Anyway, I don't want to get into this discussion. The point that you're alluding here to with the discussion in Discord with players and what Shala is saying here, I can see that a game like this will make you think more critically and maybe improve your media literacy, or maybe um, make you want to improve on it, or reflect
Yeah, that
critically
that's
on your own
that's definitely my
media
hope.
literacy. Right. Stranger, of course, says, however paranoid you are, you're not paranoid enough.
Truer words were never spoken.
Stranger is very paranoid. He's paranoid for the entire first row of this full house book club here. Camera, please pan towards the audience. We have a full house. It's amazing. Whenever we talk about books, nobody shows up. Now we talk about games, and everybody shows up. I'm kidding. Welcome everyone. We're talking today with Joannes Truyens, and he is the leader. What is your role? Because there is a team. This is also fascinating. I mean, this was written by a bunch of people, and the art is by a bunch of different people. Here's a slide: Lee Alexander, Malka Older, Yutanjaya Vicharatne, who was on this program, Axel Hassan Tayari, writers and illustrators. for this game, and you were kind of coordinating all this. And
Yeah,
yeah.
I would like there's six writers. Two of them are not mentioned here, so I'd like to call out I.O.
Oh,
Black and Ed Smith. So there were six guest writers that I brought on to the project. Again, the Wikipedia format sort of lent itself well to being an anthology as well, and I basically figured, well, here's a bunch of writers that I admire and would love to work with. So why don't I just reach out to them and see if they're interested in writing technically little short stories in the form of Wikipedia articles. And, they jumped at the opportunity. And then after the Kickstarter, I was able to pay them. And boy, did they deliver. Like some of those guest articles are my favorite ones on all of Omnipedia. So while I provided the foundation, they enriched the world of neurocracy with fresh voices and perspectives and knowledge that I could never have, brought on my own. So
There is.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I keep interrupting because I'm too excited. This is very unprofessional of me, but people know that I have a long history in public access with a viewership of 3 people, so I have not learned. Maybe I should look up some Wikipedia article about hosting a program. I love some of these plot points. Euphoria here. There's an article on the death of a contestant of this reality show, right? I put this up here. Although all our contestants are informed that loss of life is statistically a possible outcome of participation in our entertainment properties, we remain deeply saddened by the senseless death of Bohu Skinner. What is that all about? I mean, there's so many, and it's everything is really, really well written. I mean, this must have been a logistical challenge to get all this stuff written and assigned to different people and get it done and
Well,
linked together.
I did there was that was always the plan where the writers that I bring in, I would sort of tell them what the premise was and what the central arc of the storyline would be and the details of this world of 2049. But I wouldn't really assign anything. Then I would just like, okay, and now you write basically whatever you are interested in writing about because the Wikipedia format sort of makes it all fit together naturally. Where we have an article on a typhoon, we have an article on for instance, dirge, post rock band,
Hmm.
and sort of the format enabled all those topics to be included naturally. And yeah, this Euphoria corporate message was written by Lee Alexander, and it perfectly captures sort of the callousness of these large corporations whenever they try to appear human over some tragedy that they probably caused. So the Are You For Real story arc is one of my absolute favorites across Omnipedia, and it
Yes.
really is because Lee Alexander was interested in writing also a murder mystery and uh, including an AI hosted reality show. And to see that arc unfold across the 10 episodes, I mean, the community went wild with it because it's kind of an interesting setup for this type of story where you have it's a lawsuit, like a courtroom drama,
Hmm.
where the verdict of the jury is the end result. So everybody was really looking forward to that. And yeah, this everything that Lee wrote about this AI hosted reality show is one of my favorite parts of Neurocracy.
And this is the lively part, and here's well, I don't want to call it mundane part. I put this up earlier. The privacy policy, of course, is also there. We recognize the importance of privacy when using the internet. Information which you provide to Omnipedia, either directly through online forms or via email, or indirectly, is covered by our privacy policy. So all that stuff is in there. You mentioned again the "Are you for real?" with the big image here in the back behind the audience. On the table in front of us are a few little cards of illustrations. The AI host, I now forgot his name. He's on with the
Cupoid.
yellow hair. Cupoid.
Yeah,
Oh, wait a
Cupoid.
minute. This is the creator. What's the guy with the yellow hair?
Oh, that's Early Bird or Jason Cerise Vandergrift Jones, I think. What Lee
Just
comes up
testing
with the
you that you know your own game. Well, very good, very good.
but I love like my favorite part of world building is getting to name things, especially if I can smuggle a cool acronym in there. And the names that Lee Alexander came up with for the characters and things involved with her story arc just be away. Like you already mentioned, Bohu Skinner, Marfa Poindexter, and just Q Point. I
Wait
think
a
on
minute.
the
Here's somebody in the local chat. Pyrofox says free early bird. Can we take a second to admire this very elaborate pun?
Oh yeah, and, I'd also like not to uh, call out or anything, but Parafu is one of the foremost community members who was there for the release of the 10 episodes last year, and they did so much to make the stories and universe of Neurocracy shine. So to have them here is really quite a treat.
Wow, that is amazing. They found their way. I don't know how they heard about Second Life. Maybe they looked it up on Omnipedia.
Who can
Uh,
say?
um, Zhu Pao is the corporation here. The logo is very cool. What's up with this logo? The pig.
Well, oh, there's a bit of backstory there. So to make Omnipedia, like I'm not a web designer, I asked a friend of mine to help me with like making Omnipedia, and they used Drupal, which is kind of like
Mhm.
I don't know, a syntax to make websites. And when I looked up some things about Drupal, I realized that the Chinese term for the pig runs is Zhupao, which the creator of Drupal listed as being similar to the name. And I just found the name Zhupao sounded so cool to me that I wanted to name the company after that. So I made it a Drupal company originally, and then I decided to run with the pig theme for that. And Alice Duke, our illustrator, created a beautiful logo for that company. And I think earlier you saw the company headquarters emitting a hologram of a piglet into the sky, so that became
Oh
sort of
yeah,
the theme for that company.
let me put that up here. And also, Pyrofox is also mentioning this guy Ephraim Waite. Now,
Ooh.
let's talk a little bit about plot before we then go into the history. And the camera, can the camera please go into one of these glass display cages where this, uh, this kind of scary, ominous figure, this head is rotating. I put that rotation script in there, by the way. I mean, I am
It
very
looks very
multi-talented.
nice.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm also
Uh,
supposed to distract you while Pirofu steals the Ephraim Waite hologram. So
Oh. Oh my God. We got thieves from the 2D game to the 3D world. What's this Ephraim Wait guy? What's his deal?
okay, so after the Kickstarter, I was approached by one of the writers you mentioned earlier, Axel, and they seemed very intrigued by the project and asked if they could, contribute. And I immediately loved their style and their writing, so I was very happy to bring them on board. And then they offered to write an article about Ephraim Waite, this sort of very mysterious singer-songwriter type that we were then able to incorporate into the larger storyline in some very, very interesting ways. And I was
Mm.
very happy to see that during the community interaction, Ephraim Waite became a breakout character where whenever a new episode was released, everybody would jump to Ephraim Waite's article first. It was called Ephraim Watch, I believe, to see what was happening with that character. And another aspect of it is just look at him. Look at them. They're
Mm.
devilishly handsome.
Yeah. And you rolled out, I asked you this earlier, but real quick, so when you talk about episodes, but did you really roll out stuff piecemeal? Can we imagine this rolling out articles on a daily basis, or what was this like a dump of 50, 60 per week, or what kind of frequency
It
were you
was
doing it?
weekly, so 10 weeks in the summer of 2021. And I think the first episode launched with about 9 articles. And then each subsequent episode added between 3 or 4. Like, I didn't want to dump 50 articles every week and expect people to go through all of them.
Right.
I think the end result, like in episode 10, there are about 40 or 35, between 35 and 40 articles in total. But of course, the revisions, the article edits, add a lot to that as well. So an article that looks one way in episode 2 might look very different in episode 9.
Now, we've been talking about, I mean, this is interactive fiction. I do want to info dump a little bit of this stuff because the little knowledge that I have of this genre comes from a game that was acquired by Linden Lab, makers of Second Life, quite a while ago, called Versu, made by Emily Short. And Versu was an
Mm,
iPad game where there was a story, and you were choosing. It was kind of a choose your own adventure for a digital device, but it was
mhm,
also more. There was an algorithm, and the story changed depending on your interaction with those characters, what you wanted these characters to do.
mhm.
And so, to my surprise, Versu is actually still online. So it's at versu.com, and Emily Short is the maker of this game. I interviewed her back, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago on the Drex Files Radio Hour. So you can look that up and listen to it. It's very interesting, and kind of a bummer that that game doesn't exist anymore. But how do you actually? Let me put up one more. How do you see your game compared to the history of these choose your own adventure books? This is a collage that Shyla put together, choose your own adventure books from the 70s up to the present. There's all sorts of different things. I'm sure people are familiar with choose your own adventure,
Mm.
where you have, go left or go right, and then you skip to page 50 or whatever, and then something happens, but you will always arrive at the end pretty much. I was surprised that there's a book with Martin Luther King Junior, you can make a difference. And we were joking in the production meetings, like, oh, Martin Luther King, you can make a difference as a choose your own adventure book published by the FBI, where you can either assassinate Dr. King or make him commit suicide. Okay,
It
too soon. I
definitely
know.
interactive fiction is like that world. I kind of sort of fell ass backwards into it once I figured out that bureaucracy counted as hypertext fiction, and
Ah,
that's how I got to know the work of Emily Short. She's got a blog with an incredible amount of valuable resources. So she actually reviewed a very early version of Neurocracy for a competition that I entered. I think that was 2019. So to have her say nice things about Neurocracy at that point was a huge boost. So I'm very happy that you brought her up, and I'll definitely be revisiting that interview you mentioned. But yeah, like Neurocracy sort of finds itself in the tradition of choose your own adventure games, but there is, in a sense, less agency because you can't really choose like dialogue options or replies or go left or right. I like to think of it more as a choose your own interpretation
hmm.
story where the information on Omnipedia is fairly static. It doesn't change depending on your actions. So the only agency that you have is like the interpretations that you take away, the clues that you find, the connections that you make. And I was very happy to see that the community took those stories in a lot of different directions. Like, yeah, yeah.
And it's also the other difference is, of course, I mean, this is you kind of implying it, and we talked about it earlier, is that there is no clear, I mean, with the books, there is a clear ending. Everybody arrives at that same end at some point, right? And here you don't.
Well,
I mean,
the
it's
thing
not
is,
even the point to have an ending, or is
the
it?
ending that I had in mind was kind of set in stone from the beginning. But what I then hoped for was that the world of neurocracy would be, thematically rich enough that if players did find out that ending, like in episode 2 or 3, that it would exist alongside all other interpretations without people figuring out which one was, valid. Because in a sense, they're all valid. It genuinely happened that one of the community members figured out the ending in episode 2, but nobody picked up on it because it just existed alongside all other interpretations equally. So when episode 10 landed and then confirmed that theory, it didn't come at the expense of all others. It felt like, all the stories, all the interpretations, all the theories that the community came up with across those 10 episodes still like were not undone at the end.
It's really an amazing concept. And earlier we spoke of Lee Alexander, one of your writers, a game writer, game designer. And interestingly, once I found out that she was part of your team, I looked her up on her YouTube channel, and she has a YouTube channel where she plays very, very old games. And this is also
Yes.
in that same tradition here. And here's a bunch of screenshots from a game called Escape from Rangistan. Now, this is arguably, I mean, I guess this is the digital version of the choose your own adventure. I mean, again, this is not an analogy. Here is the analog version, and is the digital version. I think people understand that. But here, check out these screenshots from Escape from Rangistan. I don't know if how old people are here in this audience, but there used to be a game genre where there was a very crude drawing, and underneath here it says a bridge ahead crosses a chasm. Enter command, and then here she already entered. Look, bridge, and then the reply is you see nothing unusual. Enter command, and then it goes from there. Here's another screen grab. Here you need to run and then jump. This is a kind of a desert here with some cacti. And here you find a book, Fly by Night. It is a book on aviation. Now you know how to fly. Your license is in the mail. You are in a jail cell. Very interesting. Did you grow up with? I mean, you're younger than me for sure, but what's your relationship to these types of games, to these text-based adventure games?
Like honestly, I didn't really play a great many text adventures until I started, developing Neurocracy. And after entering that contest in 2019, that's when I really started grappling with interactive fiction and how Neurocracy relates to it. Like my gaming history finds itself more in first-person shooters and RPGs, and that's why initially I wanted to design Neurocracy as a mod for an existing shooter,
Or
Half-Life
Half-Life?
2.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that never materialized because I think it was in my early 20s and it was a wildly overambitious project for what I could pull together at that point. It was only the Wikipedia format that gave me the confidence to be like, oh, this is something I can actually pull off.
And you know what? This is so interesting because, again, I mean, I said it before, and the regular viewers of this program and our community knows that I repeat this quite frequently that I am not a gamer. I'm not shitting on gamers, and I don't think that I'm above gamers. I just happen to be a complete book nerd, and every free minute that I have, I'm reading books. And the my generation, when I meet with people and they say, "Oh, did you play this game? You're my age. Oh, you remember that game with that machine?" I said, "Well, I don't remember that." They go, "Well, what did you do in your free time?" Well, I was locked up in a room and I wanted to become the best musician in the world, best guitar player and then best piano player. So that's how I spent my time. I'm not feeling superior than other people, but that's the reason why I have absolutely no reference to any game. But I find it highly fascinating. And Johannes, what you said, that you are basically a connoisseur of very graphic intensive games, and now you're making something where a lot of imagination is required by the player, and I
Hmm.
find that wonderful. I mean, there, not to judge or put it in a hierarchy, but what is required, I would argue with your game and with these types of games, there's a lot of stuff in your own head that you have to fill in, obviously, with these kind of crude graphics, and then with
Yeah,
Wikipedia.
that's sort of
Yeah.
the whole gameplay setup where players fill in the blanks and assemble a story in their heads. There is a rich tradition of that in video games. In like in the shooters and RPGs that I played, you can sort of sometimes find text data logs in the world that, you know, they're not necessary to progress, but they do color the world. They offer more details, and I was always interested in those bits of storytelling. And I think Neurocracy, in a way, is just that those bits of storytelling presented without the game. Um, yeah.
I always, yeah, yeah, no, no. I'm sorry. I'm breathing in, and then we go, people need to shut up. No, no, no. Let me just breathe. No, I don't want to interrupt you, Johannes. I'm sorry.
There
This is a
is
terrible
there
habit.
is a game like the game that most directly influenced Neurocracy is a game called Deus Ex, which was released in
Ah, yeah.
2000, and it's sort of like a cyberpunk RPG. And that's the game I've probably played the most. And if you put a gun to my head and ask me what my favorite game is, I'd probably say, "Please don't kill me," and then I'd say Deus Ex. And I actually reached out to one of the writers of Deus Ex with when Bureaucracy was first starting to come together, and they actually sort of gave very positive feedback, which was a very welcome boost at the time. So I guess in a way, I've just been trying to create my own Deus Ex game, and the Wikipedia format for Neurocracy was in a way that I felt myself able to do that, to sort of build my own near future cyberpunk science fiction world and present that to players.
This is your inspirational Triumvirat here, Deus Ex, Half-Life, and Sin. And this is another slide here, just a little bit more of these interactive video games from the 80s. It's not completely text-based. There are graphics here, but still, I mean, it's an amazing genre here. This one with this castle, for example, and then the moat around it, and the big writing here in the middle, misfortune strikes and you have fallen into the moat. Your
Mhm.
struggles and cries have attracted hungry alligators. They do not want to let you go. Now, you mentioned the tradition of imagination and imagining things. And Johannes, I told you earlier, we need to address what I found on your blog, which are movie scripts. Um, Let me bring out this visual aid here. Oh, Pirafox also said that she, or they will not miss stealing the Ephraim White hovering in the glass. Pirafox, remind me later. I'll give you one. You can attach it to your avatar's head, and you too can be Ephraim
Wow.
White.
Oh,
um,
they're gonna love that.
but it's only a cardboard cutter. It's like holding a cardboard cutout in front of you. But it's a good start. I mean, he's handsome enough. Even at a cardboard cutter, you might look good. Now you have all these scripts on your blog. Alien, Isolation, the movie, Assassin's Creed, the other movie, Battlefield 3, the movie. What is all that about?
Yeah, that came from, I think this was around 2008, 2009. There's this website called The Editing Room, which creates like satirical scripts of movies, sort of highlighting their flaws in a comedic fashion. And that's a website that I used to read a lot, especially um, during so there was a job that I had that was fairly boring, so I just spent most of the time reading those scripts, and they inspired me to then write my own for video games. Like the first one that I wrote was actually for Deus Ex, and then I just kept doing that because it was a lot of fun. Uh, and yeah, then I just started uploading them to my blog, and people seemed to like them, so I wrote more of them, and I think that sort of helped me figure out like deconstructing game narratives sort of taught me how they're put together and what the possibility space there is. But then at some point I stopped writing them, and I think it was because I saw a tweet, and I'm going to paraphrase it horribly here, and it was about it was lamenting how basically we're dealing with like popular culture by trying to defeat it, by trying to find all the little flaws and pointing them out, basically like the cinema
Yeah,
sins approach. And while I think I do
that's
believe
a good
that
point.
yeah, I believe the scripts that I wrote like sort of felt too close to that to continue them. But I'm not. I still have them online, so it's not that I'm ashamed of them or anything. And I do like some of the points and jokes that I made in them, especially in the latter ones. I think some of the earlier scripts have a bit more like a juvenile humor, but in the later ones, I genuinely just incorporated critiques, voiced proper critiques. So I do like having written those scripts, and I think they taught me a lot. But that's the reason that I stopped writing them, because they veered a little too close to that cinema sins territory.
This is interesting. I never heard about that, but that the cinema sins and first of all, also juvenile humor. There's nothing wrong with it. This is something from the Alien movie. Amanda Ripley's aboard a space station where she's welding a thing onto another thing. Christopher Samuels enters. Christopher Samuels, camera, please zoom onto the thing. Christopher Samuels, hello, Amanda. Oh, sorry, I suppose everyone calls you Ripley, right? Winks at camera. Amanda Ripley, this is a future where everyone calls each other by their surname. Yes. I'll give you a moment to reflect on the entire franchise and find a handful of exceptions to that rule. Yeah, this is so if I understood you correctly, I mean, this is a way to exercise or maybe rehearse or um, get those muscles, those script writing muscles, but then you poke gentle fun um, and some real critique on these franchises as well.
Yeah, like, but
Kind of
another
a Mel
reason.
Brooks Mel Brooks writes satires or spoofs of games.
Oh, that is a very flattering comparison. I'll take it
Yeah.
because I did grow up with Mel Brooks's movies and spoofs. But another reason that I stopped writing them is because it sort of created this mindset where I couldn't really watch a movie or play a game without looking for the flaws, and so that I could turn them into jokes, and sort of that take away from my enjoyment. So that's another reason why I had to stop writing them.
Oh boy, Johannes, this is we gotta clip this one because that can be. Oh boy, I know exactly what you're saying. This is the disease that can you can catch where you cannot enjoy anything anymore without that
Yeah, yeah. It was making me too
sorry.
cynical.
Yeah, the cynical, disease of cynicism. I mean, I veer towards that direction sometimes, and then I have to remind myself, you know what? I'm going to enjoy this formulaic piece of the cult that Adorno called the culture industry, and compared the culture industry to Nazi propaganda in the 40s in his seminal book about the Enlightenment, the dialectic of the Enlightenment. But I digress. That's on the Second Life Book Club spin-off called the Second Life Philosophical Spin-off with Draxtor, where I talk against the wall because nobody shows up and is interested in that subject matter. Anyways, we have to end on time today because I have a shoot, and
Right.
but we're having a super good time, and we still have a little time. Now, I want to ask you about Kickstarter. You did some Kickstarter funding. I find it fascinating, Kickstarter and other crowdfunding um, projects. I was involved in a few, and a lot of people who have done it would advise against it for a variety of reasons. How did the Kickstarter aspect of this project pan out for you? I mean, why did you do it, Uh, and how was it done, and would you recommend it to people?
Well, I did it because initially I did pitch Neurocracy to publishers and funds, and they all came back with interesting, but no. It was a little too experimental and unproven at the time. And then one of the publishers that I was speaking with then recommended crowdfunding and self-publishing. So then I made the jump to Kickstarter, but it wasn't just like, the next day I had the page set up. If you want to start a Kickstarter, you have to sort of prepare it first and pull together a community of people who are ready to click that pledge button the moment your Kickstarter campaign launches,
Yeah.
which we then also used as sort of a proof of concept for Neurocracy itself, because we sort of started putting together the Discord community and inviting people, And in doing so, we were able to test the episodic release. I think the first version had three minor episodes with a total of 8 articles in them. And then we released those episodically and saw that, yes, people are willing to come together and discuss story interpretations between episodes. So it was really a heartwarming, like validation of the gameplay model for Neurocracy that we didn't really know was going to work. So that the dual purpose of also preparing for the Kickstarter. And yeah, that whole month, I think it was October 2020 when we launched the Kickstarter. That was, one of the most stressful months of my life. I've never used my refresh button so much. But
You asking what were you asking for? I mean, the different pledge levels, money.
we were asking for £10,000 total, which would pay for bringing on the writers and the artist.
Mhm.
And I think we ended up at 12,000 and change. But
That's amazing. I mean, there are projects that never get funded, like you said. I mean, you have to get started with a core of people where you know that they will pledge. Otherwise, it will just sit there among. I'm sure there is an option to promote it where you pay them a little and they put it up on the front page, but it's going to be completely buried.
in this case, I think the premise really helped in that, exploring a near future world through the Wikipedia of that world sort of immediately spoke to people like it hadn't really been done before, especially not in an episodic way. So I think people were sort of intrigued by that novel premise. And it also helped that, the writers that I brought on have their own networks. And we sort of, because with Kickstarter, you have sort of a lot of pledges in the beginning and then a lot of pledges in the end when people are reminded. But in the middle, you have the slump, like the
Hmm.
Kickstarter slump. And the challenge is then to keep momentum going. And what we did was we announced the writers involved like on a weekly basis so that then their networks would learn about the project and hopefully spread the word, which, definitely did happen. I was sort of reluctant to bank on that because I involved these writers to work with them, not because of their name recognition, but in this case, it did help out bringing the Kickstarter to a successful end.
The critique or the challenge from the people that I spoke to and the projects that I was involved with, people keep the same sentiment comes up time and again is that while Kickstarter is nice and conceptually and etc., but when you it becomes a full-time job,
Hmm.
especially fulfilling the pledges and sending out that whole operation when people say, okay, if you pledge, then you will get a hat or this shirt and whatnot, and all of a sudden they find themselves in having to basically become a shipping
Hmm.
operation for merchandise.
That's why we kept all rewards digital and also within the theme of neurocracy, in that the pledges sort of allowed you to insert yourself in the world of neurocracy by, I think at the lower pledges, you would be mentioned in a citation in one of the articles. And then the higher pledges, you had your name um, as one of the pop-ups, the tooltips, so people could create their own little characters for
Oh
Omnipedia.
my God.
Yeah, so it was all digital
Wait a
and we
minute.
didn't.
Where is part two? I need to be in there. Take my money. I have Linden dollars. Oh my God.
Well, let me know who you would like to be in the world of 2049 and you'll be added right away.
Oh my God. Let's see. I have to look at my Linden dollar balance. Do you take Lindens? Lindens
For
are worth
you,
a lot.
Dragster, it will be for free.
I will bring in so many people, I mean, I tried to get on the real Wikipedia, but I am only on the metaverse. If you look up metaverse on Wikipedia, this is actually true. I don't know if people know this. If you go to wikipedia.org and you type in metaverse, it's not the picture of Mark Zuckerberg. It's a picture of the Drex Files podcast. I'm not kidding you.
Oh,
I mean, it
that's
says
lovely.
underneath Second Life avatars at a meeting or whatever it says, but this this is so funny because when a friend of mine put that into the Wikimedia, she took it and she put it in there, and it's being used over and over again. I just saw it yesterday
Mhm.
on LitHub, was an article about the metaverse, and I was looking for something else, and then this comes up. Um, anyway, what was I going to say? Kickstarter, yes. And where was I? Now I lost my train of thought. Um, oh yeah, gamers. Now here's a quote that Shyla pulled, uh, where you said in an interview, "There is no game to play if we tell you what to solve or how to solve it, or whether it can be solved at all." I mean, we talked about that. That's sort of this open-ended and just these various different modes of engaging with the content, a word that I hate, but that's another matter. As a
Mhm.
result, all the ingrained pattern recognition and habits gamers have when it comes to wikis get scrambled. Is this page meant to help me or trick me? Who wrote this and why? What matters to me as a player? What should I care about and try to decode? I mean, we talked about that. That's one of the fascinating aspects of this format. It's also an
Mhm.
aspect where it could, you know, hopefully it creates more media literacy. My question, I guess, is when I read when Shyla sent me this quote that she pulled, I was like, well, should I say that in my elitist snobbish mindset, gamers are conditioned to play rinse and repeat forever, or is that the cynic in me? The cynic in you is involving game franchises of movies or movies. My Second Life, or as a Second Life resident, where I
Mhm.
feel the intrinsic motivation is, harnessed here. I sometimes feel gamers are, and that has to do with my personal experience of bringing gamers into Second Life, where invariably they say, "Well, what am I supposed to do here?" That I mean, again, this is only my personal experience, but the experience is basically 100% of every gamer or self-classified gamer that I brought into Second Life, where they have enormous problems being in a digital world where there is no clear-cut goal.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, at Linden Lab over the years, many executives have proposed a gamification aspect or some sort of point system that will keep the gamers inside Second Life. So I
Well,
don't know.
I,
There's a big philosophical question. What do you think about this sort of conditioning of, like, okay, extrinsic motivation, I need points, or intrinsic motivation, hey, I'm just doing this because I love it and I want to see, I don't know, a weird sculpture that I can show my friend or
well,
just look at it myself.
that was very much a concern throughout, and I think it was one of the earliest articles about neurocracy written by Alexis Ong that mentioned, as you say, gamification. But what I prefer is that neurocracy sort of banks on gamefulness, which is about finding the existing sort of interesting gameplay aspects of an experience. In this case, wiki dive, rather than gamification, which is applying the logic of games to something else in order to incentivize people. So gamefulness is definitely something that I was going for. But I would also like to point out that the quote on the screen there is not something that I said. It's something that the guest writer Axel said for an article in The Verge.
Oh,
But and I couldn't have said it any better. They encapsulate the intended experience for neurocracy so well, and because the thinking there is um, yeah, like we have had people coming into our Discord and asking, like, okay, well, what's the point? What's the goal? How will I know I've succeeded? But that was sort of outweighed by the freedom that players experience when we don't
hmm.
really instruct them what to do. There's a murder mystery, so obviously you think like, okay, who's the killer? So that's obviously hopefully an enticing hook right there. But the sort of the main thing there is if we let players find the questions as well as the answers, then the results get far more interesting, which was very much demonstrated during those 10 weeks last summer. So it was we basically seeded Omnipedia with a bunch of clues and story threads, some that were connected, some that were not, and then allowed people to come up with their own conclusions, their own directions, like whatever scratched their specific itches. If you go to the Omnipedia main page and you see the article about the reality show, if that takes your interest, then go there. If you want to go with the murder mystery, then go there. We didn't really want to direct players right away.
I mean, I'm wired this way in with this sort of, I don't know what is there a classification system of explorer? There used to be this uh group of core different sort of personality types, explore, augmentationalist or whatever in Second Life. Tsai says point system in Second Life. If they want me gone, that's a start. So uh, but Jonas, thank you. I love the term gamefulness. I mean, I love that, and it's very obvious in your design that that's what you were going for. And like you said, I mean, you get more interesting results in
Hmm.
for the players, and I think it's also much more mature way of communicating with the players. I mean, it collapses the hierarchy between, frankly, the creator and the consumer, which I find so nauseating, frankly, in our
Yeah,
modern world. I mean, do we really want to keep that hierarchy? No, we want to collapse it. We want to find a way where there's not some, I don't know, elite creator class, and the rest is just consuming the scraps that this creator class decides to throw into their mouths,
yeah,
right?
that's exactly it. With Neurocracy, the main point was, we trust our audience. We want to work together with them. The interactive part. I'm gonna quote Lee Alexander here again because she phrased it much better than I could. Describing Neurocracy as a live, updating mystery that exists in conversation with the community, unfolding across a metatextual medium. And it's really that conversation, the back and forth between the community and developers, and as you say, sort of collapsing those boundaries. Not unlike sort of a tabletop RPG campaign with like a game
Yes,
master.
I was just thinking of it exactly.
Yeah,
It's like a
and
table. It's like a
allowing
D&D. Hmm.
yeah, exactly, and allowing that freedom, and the audience may come up with better ideas and suggestions than what you had in mind, and the ability to then run with that rather than, oh well, no, I had this other thing in mind, so we're going to go with that. No, no, just if you allow yourself that freedom and you trust your audience, then the results are so much richer uh, than otherwise.
Real quick, because this also came up, hypertext versus cybertext. I never heard the term cybertext. I think
Um,
Shyla
I
read something about that, our researcher. Is
um,
cybertext something that exists?
I think. Hang on, let me quickly check text because I think that comes from. Uh, oh yeah, like there's this an academic called Espen Arseth who came up with the name of cybertext in the context of hypertext fiction and sort of ergodic literature, which is kind of like literature
Ah,
that requires an effort on the part of the reader in order to traverse the text. It's not just presented to you in a linear fashion, page to page. It's like you have to actually work and do mental legwork to piece the story and the world together. And that's very much what Neurocracy expects of its audience.
I see.
So
So, and that ties in with my final question, actually. Do you think that, I mean, we're talking about we're throwing all these terms around, text-based adventure game, interactive fiction,
mhm.
uh, but we're essentially talking today about non-linear fiction and versus linear fiction, a book. You typically read it from beginning to end. Sometimes you do skip around, and there's obviously a lot of fantastic experimental stuff. We actually have a show next month about this amazing book, America and the Cult of the Cactus Boots, which I highly recommend everyone. It's completely mind-boggling. It's
Hmm.
it's insane. But typically a book is linear. Here, this is non-linear. If you look into the future, and some people have expressed such that they don't see linear fiction survive, or that it's an outdated form, what do you think? Linear fiction, will it survive? And linear fiction is obviously also a TV show or a movie. Um,
I think there's room for both. I think there's sort of an appetite out there for stories that involve the audience in some way, but there will always be a room for strictly linear narratives. Um, again, neurocracy isn't really something that I set out to be this interactive thing. It just occurred naturally from adopting Wikipedia as the format. But I think there's definitely sort of, I think if you make the connection between like different story elements yourself, it's that much more powerful than if it's presented to you on a platter. Sort of, if the revelation of a story is not just like a paragraph in a novel, but you made the connection by finding all the clues, that's just that much more powerful because it involves you in a very direct way. And I think that's what we were going for with Neurocracy and its interactive storytelling elements.
But a novel is not only, I mean, this is a huge question that goes way beyond your project, but a novel is also more than its plot points, right? I mean, a novel explores or can explore the relationship between human beings, look at deeply philosophical questions about the nature of what it means to be human, etc. But it does so in this linear fashion along pretty much unchanged structure, just like a Hollywood movie. Depending on who you ask, it's based on Greek drama or Joseph Conrad or whatever. And now we have digital media, um, where things become uh, blurred, and where you change the timeline, and you jump back and forth, um, to
Yeah, it
arrive
was
at
never my it
something.
was never
Or
my
yeah.
it was never my intention to transcend genres even while reinventing them, but here we are.
Yeah, that's what Einstein said, Johannes. You're in good company. I never. No, no. I mean, this is awesome, and I don't know where. Sometimes I feel like I don't know. I'm. Why am I?
I mean, I
Why?
like to think that like
Why
reading
am
a
I standing up?
novel is inherently interactive because you know you sort of visualize what's on the page and you
Yes.
create that world in your head. So there is an inherent dialogue between like author and reader. And Omnipedia's interactivity is a bit more challenging because you only get sort of the world building elements, and then you have to build a story from that. Where I like to sort of describe it as, you know, there's a story iceberg where what you see above the water, the 10% of the iceberg is, you know, is what you see in a 2 hour movie. But everything below the water is like everything that supports that, the world building,
Yes.
the character backstories. And I feel that Neurocracy sort of flips that, and that you get the 90% under the water, all the world building elements, and then you have to use that to piece together the remaining 10% above the water, which is the story, the plot progression.
This is very well said. This is very well said. I agree 100%, because I just felt for a minute like I'm like, oh, this old guy. My books don't take away my books. Nobody's reading books anymore. Well, that's true. Because of all that interactive stuff. Don't take them away from me. Okay, Johannes, I gotta be brutal. This is a wonderful conversation, and thank you
I'm
so
loving
much
it.
for coming. Johannes Truyens and Neurocracy 2049. It's really a big amazing project that folks should check out.
Thank you so much.
Quite amazing. Um, where was I? Oh yeah. Now this place will of course stay here. People can explore. People can check out omnipedia.app on the stations here, and then when they get to explore the book club archipelago, they can go here and meet. And now I forgot already the name of our visitor from the other world. Is he still here? Is he still about to steal objects here
Oh,
from the super fan? Oh my God. I think he left because he stole something. Anyways, um, thank you, Honest, and thank you, audience here in world. Thank you, audience on YouTube. Thank you, Kitten Duo, our wonderful Kitten Duo. Thank you for the super chat. If you want to support this program, this is a volunteer effort. It's all built by us. We have a little sponsorship from Linden Lab in terms of the islands. We don't have to pay rent, but do tip. The tip jar is here in front. It's that dragon sculpture that Silas made. You can tip here, and please do consider joining the YouTube channel. Oh, Pyrofox. Pyrofox said it was amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. Pyrofox already um, left Second Life, but he's still on YouTube. Weird how that goes. These people, Johannes, your fans, they love 2D more than 3D. Very
Well, they
strange.
also love to spread themselves across different media formats, which is very fitting for neurocracy.
True. They're like a virus in a way, in a weird way.
Also fitting for neurocracy.
Yes. And for the real world. The real world. Anyways, let's go through the credit slides real quick. The Second Life Book Club is every week. I tried to spread it out to a bi-weekly, but we couldn't do it. We have too many wonderful, interesting topics. Every Wednesday, 12
Ooh,
o'clock Pacific time, which is Second Life time. slbookclub@draxtor.com is the email for the program. And the show is produced by Isabel Sharin, Shiloh the Super Gecko, and myself. The location manager, master builder is Ruby Geek. The avatars are made by Ruby and Bespoke Caravan, research by Shyla and Monkey. Yeah, Johannes, stand up real quick because you wanted your avatar to be very, very small, which is so
yes,
interesting because you said you're very tall in real life and you
this is
want it to
true.
be small.
That's like I tend to sort of stand out everywhere. So any opportunity I can to be small and disappear into the crowd, I'll take it.
You can totally disappear. You can hang out with Kippy and the role playing community over at Escapades where they do young folks role playing, and it's an awesome community where I actually also have an arcade. But I digress. Um, Now, don't forget to tip. I already said that. Very important. Next week is the Big Perry Roden special. The Big Perry Roden special. What is Perry Roden? Perry Roden is the biggest sci fi series in the world. Yes, it's also the oldest and longest running sci fi series in the world. It's not Doctor Who, it's not Star Trek, it's not Star Wars. Matter of fact, all these three entities were inspired at some point or another by Perry Roden. The reason why nobody knows about Perry Roden outside of Germany is because, unfortunately, there's only a small portion translated into English, although there is a new venture, Perry Roden Neo, which is in English. And there's also a huge Japanese community, and in Brazil it's huge, and in the Netherlands. But we'll dissect Perry Roden and its 60-year history of 5,000 books in a universe that makes Star Trek look tiny, and we'll do that in English. So if you're English speaking and you want to know what inspired George Lucas, it's true. Come and check out Perry Roden, and they're publishing every week. So that's next week. What time did I say? 12 o'clock Pacific time. And that concludes the stream. Thank you very much. And again, thank you big time, Kitten, our wonderful kitten duo. And I hope that kitten duo will come to in world sometime. She's always on YouTube. Goodbye.
Thank you all so much. This was amazing.